For too many years, families of children with devastating illnesses have felt helpless as they watch their child suffer. Today, they're taking matters into their own hands and finally finding relief treating their child with cannabis. These are their stories.
Hey guys, welcome back to part 2 with Dr. Zora DeGrandpre. I'm sorry, I'm butchering it. I apologize.
Aren't you glad I switched from my maiden name, though?
Oh, I can only imagine. And we're having this great conversation about her experience, her background, working as a writer for professional journals, especially in the around botanical, medicinal, and pharmacological interactions with herbs and supplements. And her background is also extensive, working with patients with epilepsy, cancer, and all types of ailments. And she uses a holistic approach. Welcome back, Dr. DeGrandpre.
Welcome back to the
Thank
show.
you.
So in our part 1, you were mentioning some fascinating things that resonated with me, especially when it came to our son Aiden. And you were talking about how, depending on the gene expression, and correct me if I'm saying this wrong, one person may have different benefits or react to CBD differently.
Yes. And that's why some people will say it isn't working for me because they haven't found that sweet spot.
And for Aiden, so we've tried different oils, and we noticed kind of the same thing that you were saying. So that's why, like, my ear really perked up in part 1, because we would notice, because like when people always, different companies would say, hey, try this, you know, our CBD is great, it's organic, it's this, and had a whole laundry list of the reasons why this should work for Aiden. So we're like, okay. And we've noticed that certain CBDs, we do not get the same results. We just don't. So then we started doing, then we said, okay, now we really have to ask a lot of questions. We have to ask, what is the strand? What is the processing like? Because we did notice that certain cannabinoids he was sensitive to.
Mainly the CBG. That was an interesting one.
It was CBG. So if we had a profile that was like high, or they added CBG, some reason it would actually trigger his seizures.
Interesting.
And then the other thing too is
that's why it's so important to read the lab results.
Yes. And also the other thing they would add is emulsifiers and other oils like sunflower oil would trigger his seizures.
Probably my guess would be the lecithin. I've run into some people who had that problem.
Yes. It wasn't sunflower. It was sunflower.
It was sunflower, and one product was sunflower that triggered it, and then we used another product that had the lecithin.
So tell me, what have you seen with that? Because we're the ones that noticed that, and we brought it up to our cannabis doctor, and then she was saying that she had some patients, particularly boys, but she didn't really. There's no real data on it, and there's not in the literature. So she was kind of using us, to get some feedback from that. So, of course,
a lot of it is anecdotal, and that's definitely improving. I assume that your son Aiden doesn't have any problems with the plant group, the sunflower plant group, the asters.
Oh, what is that exactly?
Well, any kind of plant that looks kind of like a sunflower, like a daisy. Have you noticed any problems? Because one thing that it's actually a pretty common sensitivity to the, I'm going to say the plant family name just because it's a fun thing to say, Asteraceae. And so but they're sensitive. People are sensitive to the flower, and they may know it by saying, okay, say husband brings home a bouquet of flowers to his wife, and there's daisies in there, and maybe she gets a reaction, sneezes or something. But they don't extend that to foods. So anything that has one answer to the question has a sensitivity to either sunflowers specifically or plants in that family. The other thing is when they use sunflower oil, and he didn't respond, didn't have a problem when there was lecithin. Is that right?
He did with lecithin.
Okay. So most likely it was the actual lecithin that was causing the problem, because lecithin is, even I have problems saying these things.
Me too.
That was, lecithin is very high in sunflower oil. So my first thought would be it was due to the lecithin. It is not too surprising because lecithin, and the more I say it, the harder it is incorporated into cell membranes, and that's really critical when it comes to how nerves function. So, I mean, you saw it, so it happened. But it comes to mind that it could be the way the lecithin was incorporated into his nerve cells or any kind of cells in his body, and that changed the behavior of how, not his behavior, it changed the way the CBD was working.
Yes.
Interesting.
It was as if the CBD, it's as if he wasn't taking the CBD. Like almost like it was going right through him.
That's what we thought. We thought that he had a fast metabolism because it seemed like it was just shot right through. Like it only lasted like maybe 20 minutes. It was the craziest thing.
Yeah, it's such a complexity, and that's why I said it was such a personalized medicine, because it's so important to keep track of these things, and not to say, not to give up, and that's when people start giving up. Well, this it's not working for me, blah blah, whatever. They don't have the patience or realize that a reasonable approach would be to try another brand.
Yes.
Because there's huge quality differences. One of the groups that I write for is Leaf Report, and what I love about them is that they just want the science. And I don't always run into people who appreciate the science quite as much, because it can be a little bit like, it can be a bit dry for people.
I love science.
I love science. Thank you.
I like science fiction. Does that work?
Pardon?
I like science fiction.
He likes science fiction.
I like science fiction, too. My husband and I have been watching Doctor Who. Okay, we're done with that now. Love the new woman who's Doctor Who, but love science fiction.
Okay.
But especially the science fiction that's based on truth and possibility. But, there's different... when I write for them, they're perfectly happy for me to say what the science says. So, I always tell people I can't write marketing. I don't want to write marketing, and I'm terrible at it, mostly because I don't want to. And the hype annoys me, too. It's like you've got something that has some real potential. Why on earth do you want to glam it up?
True.
I guess it's what sells. But we mentioned lab reports. I did and I've done this a couple of times where I take the lab reports and explain them line by line. Because these, once you get through it, it's understandable, but very often it seems overwhelming, but it's one of the most critical parts of what you need to know about a particular product.
Oh my God. So funny, because I studied lab reports, right? So I would explain to my husband, I say, this means this means that, just like you. And I was going to do this video for parents to know, to explain to them what exactly does it mean. Like, just like even like simple, like a milligram, versus, just to explain that.
Right.
And it's so important because it's everything. It could change everything.
The difference between the first party labs, first party lab tests, or even the difference between a first party, second party, or third party lab test.
I think it has to be an independent third party. That's my opinion. You want to. The CBD market has exploded so much. There's frankly and bluntly, there's so much money in it.
Yeah.
That if you don't have an independent, accredited ICO accredited lab, I've worked many years in labs, and you need to have people that are really trained and understand how to run an assay, what a false positive might be, what a false negative might be, what could go wrong, what is that odd peak coming out on the mass spec. You've got to understand that, and you've got to not be beholden to anyone else. You've got to just be producing these results because that's the results that came out.
That's true.
And sorry if you don't like it, but there's high levels of this pesticide.
Yes.
You gotta throw it out.
Exactly. Unacceptable levels. I'm sorry, but aspergillus, we found mold in the plants.
Wow.
You can't use these.
No.
So it really is very important to go through them, to understand what it is. And, the CBD world, potency is not a term that I prefer. I prefer concentration because potency has more subtle meanings.
It's strong,
that, I think can mislead people. So I kind of prefer the drier concentration. Give me a mg per mil any day.
Okay.
And the labeling, sometimes they put on the label of the bottle 1,000 milligrams. And in America, I'm not sure about other countries, but certainly in America, we're taught to think that more is better.
Yeah, that is true. And you don't even absorb that much to begin
more
with.
Is not better, and not necessarily better.
That's true.
And that's why I really push the start low and go slow. Even though it is a harder thing. In pharmacology, we've got dosages that, you start with 25 milligrams of this and maybe work up to 3 times a day.
And I think
that's very clear.
And I think that's really hard for doctors to understand that, more, in some cases, like you said, individualized, less is more. In some cases, yeah.
Now, you had mentioned Leaf Report. What are they and what do you do for them?
I will write all sorts of articles for them on, a wide variety. One of the articles I wrote recently, I started out, let me go back a little bit, I started out by doing reviews for them of different products, because that's really, they started out, and they would send me, it was wonderful, they were sending me various packages from different companies of CBD.
Oh, wow.
And I would literally try them out. They just wanted to know, for example, is this vanilla mocha taste of the oil, is it good? Are these gummy bears, do they come fresh? That kind of thing, rather than I used this gummy and, oh my goodness, I finally slept for the first time in 30 years, which is actually, I'll tell you the truth, what happened. Because when it comes to sleep issues, I always say I've got 10 different methods. The first 2 worked for just 99% of people, and then, I'd come up with different other approaches for various people that would come along. But mostly, I was trying different stuff myself because I wasn't sleeping. And that is absolutely vital for health. And I just, I was, one reason I always laugh that I, became total freelancer and independent and self-employed, because I can take a nap whenever I need to.
We have a lot in common.
Yep. Yeah, you heard it here first. And so one of the CBD gummies that I tried allowed me to sleep. And now I find what ends up working for me now is a 2-to-1 CBD THC ratio. In other words, I followed my own advice and I started with that, saw what worked, and then tried different varieties and different brands and found what worked for me for sleep. But that was how I started with Leaf Report, and then I would, do a review, what I thought of it, and would look at the lab analyses. And I would call the labs if something wasn't clear, or if I wanted to know, if I really wanted to talk to the tech person, what are the issues that you're running into as you're assaying this? So I would just call them up, and I would call all different places and find out how they were doing, and that's a wonderful way to learn whether that's a company you want to deal with. If they're friendly and answer your questions, because people can fake friendly, or say, customer service is number one as you're waiting on the phone for 2 hours, right? All of a sudden you think maybe customer service ain't number one. But calling up the companies is always a really good way to get a sense of what their priorities are. Are their priorities to, build a huge corporate headquarters? Or is one of their priorities people? Do they give, discounts for the disabled? Do they give military discounts? Do they look what they can do for parents maybe with a child with seizure disorder who doesn't have the funds? Are they willing to help them? That makes a huge difference. And if you can find, and I know some companies that, can I mention their names?
Go right ahead.
Okay. Charlotte's Web is one, and probably most parents know about Charlotte's Web.
Yes.
Lazarus Naturals is based in Oregon.
Yes,
I know them.
You know them.
Is, one of my favorites. I'd probably have to look at my list. Hang on, I'm looking around my desk instead.
Well, you could email it to us, too. We'll post it, and share it.
I got one, CBD Pure. It's a small family-run operation out of Vancouver, Washington.
We have a sample here.
Yeah. I keep them around my desk in case I need some. So those are, I've talked to the people there. They're great companies, great products. They are careful about what they're doing. One of my criteria is I like to see people using organic is very tough, and if a place does not have organic certification, that doesn't necessarily mean they're not doing organic growing.
That's
because
true.
Certification takes a long time and is very expensive, a lot of paperwork, and for a lot of these young, smaller farmers and companies, they don't have the money, they don't have the time to do this. So they're focusing their energy on growing and producing. But all those things calling, and so I would do that, and I would write all different sorts of articles from the legal status of CBD to, just cannabinoids in general. How to, different things, what the research was showing, what it was benefiting, and, right now, for example, the work on cancer is only in vivo, in vitro and in vivo, basically in the lab, like a petri dish kind of thing, or in some lab animals, it's showing some benefit, but it's really way early. It shows effects inducing, say, for example, a process called apoptosis, meaning cell death. Mm-hmm. Sometimes it can increase necrosis, another form of cell death. For cancer, I'm really, really cautious. 10 years, 15 years down the line, it won't surprise me, but it's a little bit too early to say. We have much more data on anti-inflammatory, on on pain reduction, certainly on seizures, on influencing mood in a positive way. We've got much more research on that, and it's a lot more of the there's a lot more basic research, but there's a lot more clinical research on that as well. So I would write about all those things, and what I like about it is they look at a broad range, and they want to be. Since I spent years teaching, I love the educational aspect of it.
That's great.
And one of you had earlier asked me about naturopathic medicine. One of the models that we follow is doctor as teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
and
of course.
teaching people about this so they can make their own choices.
Yeah.
Adults should make their own choices, but a choice based on lack of information or misinformation is no choice at all.
It's a dangerous one at that too.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And when you're making a choice about your child,
yeah,
that's a huge stressor.
Yes.
And you want to make the right choice, and the only way you can make the right choice is by learning as much as you can. And I'm glad to see more mainstream physicians involved in it. I still get people saying, well, Dr. So-and-so wanted me to talk to you about this CBD stuff because he doesn't know anything about it.
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, I know the drugs. I don't know why you can't figure out CBD, but that's,
no interest.
Whatever.
Well, it's not paying the bills.
Yeah.
You know what I mean by that.
Yeah.
But question.
So, it's opening up, and that's wonderful because, any physician should be only about the patient. And learning what they can learn and doing what they can do for the patient. But, certainly no single person can know everything. So
Sure.
There you go. But I love that educational aspect of Leaf Report.
Yeah,
I'm going to check it out.
Yeah, I was reviewing it, actually. I was like, wow, okay, this is really interesting. So let me ask you, so when you're using CBD, or even just a holistic approach, and let's say that you have one patient is suffering from autism, like two children. One suffering from autism and the other has seizures. Is there any correlations that you found, even those different types of, injuries? But did you notice any correlations between the two, and did you use the same approach or a different approach?
I actually haven't run into that specific scenario. I've had patients with autism, and I've had doctors knows me as on the spectrum. Crazy, huh? But I've not seen that in the same family. Mm-hmm. If it were in the same family, just as in general, I suspect that we're seeing, and I don't know the stats on seizure disorders, but I suspect we're seeing much more autism.
Yes.
Just because of the, you can't escape the environmental pollutants.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And it wouldn't surprise me to see that epilepsy and other seizure disorders also could be correlated with that. But be that as it may, if I ran into that situation, no, I would treat it would still be individualized medicine mm-hmm. for each child, because until you couldn't assume otherwise, because you wouldn't be treating them correctly if you made that assumption and turned out to be wrong.
The only reason why I brought it up, because I noticed that the one thing that I heard or read and also had some experience in the sense that they've always something around the gut health.
In naturopathic medicine, the gut is the primary. If you take care of the gut, the rest will follow. Mm-hmm. Is what I heard an awful lot. That's oversimplifying it, but if you take gut, you have taken care of a huge part of your health. So what you eat, what goes into your gut, how you eat is really critically important. And that's why I think I mentioned earlier, we're not fully organic. But, for example, I have a neighbor who raises cattle. And so I have grass-fed organic beef. Mm-hmm. I just had to know whether I'd actually met the cow, and that was something I hadn't wanted to get into. I have someone else. I'm working with her on medical problems, and in return, she's raising a pig using fully organic methods. So and we grow a good deal of our own. So those are organic. We stray from the path, but basically we stick. My husband said to me, he was eating supper, and he goes, 20 years ago, I would never have believed anyone could make me eat this stuff, but it's good, for which I thanked him. But the point is, we're so used to the standard American diet that we think that's normal. And, if I'm working with a native tribal group, it's easy because I'll say, eat like your ancestors did. Until they think maybe it's fry bread, and I have to say, no, except for the fry bread. But a lot of times with a lot of people, they grew up on TV dinners. They don't know how to cook. This literally happened to me. Normally, I don't do a lot of a certain store, but it's really the main store. I don't want to name that name. It's the main. I live an hour away from it. I live an hour away from any real major grocery or department stores. So I'm there, and there's this woman in front of the I'm just walking through, a woman in front of the produce section, clearly frantic. And so I said, are you all right? Can I help you? She said, I just came from my doctor, and my doctor told me I needed to eat more leafy greens, but I don't know what they are.
Wow.
I thought, oh, my God, is this candid camera? I'm the only naturopath in the county at that time. I said, and here I just walk into... And this woman's asking me about leafy greens, which is one of the main things I'm always talking to people about. And I said, plus she's standing in front of them. I said, you're standing in front of them. There's the spinach, there's the Swiss chard, there's some kale, there's some mustard. She said, how can you tell? True story. Do not make this up. I said, because they're leafy and they're green. But, the point is that she literally didn't know. And so many people, I've had people say, I've never tried Swiss chard. I'm like, here, let me go out and back and grab you a handful. Because they're really very restricted in their diets. Another actually true story. I don't know why these things happen to me. Young boy happened to be in the kitchen just before neighbor kid. I was making supper, and he looks into the saucepan, and I had put like a whole grain mixture in there and hadn't added the water yet. And he looks in there, he goes, why do you have bird food in your pan? I said, well, it's actually not. So he had to stay and try it, and he liked it. But people don't know how to cook, and they don't know the foods that they should be buying. And if it's not in your cupboard, you're not going to use it. So a lot of my time is spent educating people on how to do that. But we, to a large extent, even living out here, similar argument, because as I said, it's a very rural area, less than 3 people per square mile is the average out here. And I would hear from people, well, COVID's not going to come up here because we live in the mountains and the air is healthy. I said, a virus, it's not, you're not protected because you live out in the mountain air. But people will also come out here thinking that they're avoiding pesticides and everything. But, it's farms all over. We carefully on our pasture had to use very locally and carefully applied pesticides to get rid of a number of plants that can be harmful to farm animals.
Wow.
So no place is really safe. I would love for people to be more careful about it. And probably our well water going through a reverse osmosis filter is probably cleaner than a lot of people's municipal water, but I think you can't escape. And autism, possibly epilepsy, a lot of different a lot of different conditions, I think eventually will be at least associated with, I don't know about the strength of the association, but can at least be associated with, broadly speaking, pollution. Now, how to approach that, that's a really difficult question. Naturopaths, for example, with autism, a lot of times will use chelation therapy.
Okay. Yes.
And I've seen some. I haven't. That's not part of what I do. I've seen some success with it. That's not necessarily proof of concept.
Okay.
But it does have some suggestive value.
Okay.
But yes, the gut is central. If for example, you start something called leaky gut syndrome, I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Oh, yes, we are. We've heard that several times about that.
Yeah. Once that begins to occur, the digestive system is a tube within a tube, and that digestive system is exposed to the environment. And if you allow certain parts of that environment into your body, then you call up the immune system, which, like I said earlier, evolved to deal with, foreign substances, self, non-self. Once that gets, and I personally know this because one of the things I deal with is an autoimmune disease. But once the immune system gets confused, then it's a little bit like that domino effect, and you got to get in there pretty early and, grab that domino so it stops that domino effect. If you're gone to the end, you can still sit back up again, but where if it took 30 years to get to this point, and the body has an amazing number of, it does have an amazing number of mechanisms to balance, to maintain that homeostasis. The endocannabinoid system, one of its main functions is to maintain homeostasis and balance. But there's a limit to that. So you can regain balance, but depending on where you are along that, it may take a lot more work to get it back.
Yeah, it's true.
But I think the natural state of the body that's where it wants to be. So we've just got to get smart and help it along.
Oh my God, there's so much to learn. I wish I had another hour to sit here with you.
Call me back sometime when you've got a free moment.
We will. Believe that. We will definitely be in touch, and we'll definitely have another interview. Now, if people wanted to get in touch with you, how would they be able to reach out to you?
Email is easiest because, like I said, I live in the middle of nowhere, and cell phone lately hasn't been working. Oh, I'm not sure why. But anyway, email address is the name. So that's ZoraDeGrandpre
Okay, so because you were in and out, just in case, so it's ZoraDeGrandpre@gmail.com. So basically your name.
Correct.
Okay, great. And you have a website as well for them?
No, actually, I dropped my, that's the easiest way. I had a website, but I've had to close that down because of COVID, and they could try me on Facebook.
Okay. It's under the same name.
Under the same name, yeah.
Awesome.
You just reminded me of something that's on my list of things to do. Thanks.
Not a problem. We're here for you.
Oh, okay.
Well, I really...
That's good to know. I could really use you to remind me.
I'm better than Siri or Alexa.
Oh, gosh, I can't even go there.
No, I won't either.
I really can't go with a disembodied voice telling me what to do.
Yeah, your conscience is enough.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
All right. But I want to thank you again, Dr. DeGrandpre. Really appreciate your time and very informative. I believe we will be reaching out to you again for another interview because I have a ton of questions, and it's just amazing what you've done and what you're doing, because it's helping. I know a lot of people, and I think the information that you have will help.
Thank you so much for
Thank
agreeing.
you.
We had a great time.
Yes.
And give your son an extra hug for me.
We will.
We definitely will. And we'll send you a picture too. He's an amazing young man. I mean, it's to see how far he's come and where he is now. It's amazing. But
he looks that way to me. Yeah.
All right. Thank you very much. Well, I want to say good night and thank you again for being a part of our show.
You're very welcome. Keep up the good work.
Thank you. You do the same, and be safe.
I will. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.